Hi, you're watching Reddit Confessions. This isn't one of those stories where something slowly builds over time. No, this story snapped in half in under 30 seconds, right between a broken glass and 6 words I'll never unhear. It was raining so hard the ceiling light flickered. The storm outside wasn't nearly as loud as the one happening inside our living room. Ren stood by the window, arms crossed like she was bracing for war. I had just come home from a 12-hour shift, drenched, exhausted, and 2 minutes late for dinner. Apparently that was enough. "You're unbelievable," she hissed. I said nothing. I always say nothing. That's my specialty. She turned slowly, her eyes cold, calm, dangerous. And then came the moment that destroyed something in me, maybe for good. "You know why I'm like this, Lowell? Because living with you feels like being trapped with half a man." There was a crack. Not thunder. The wine glass in my hand hit the floor, shattered, just like everything else I thought I understood about us. I didn't yell. I didn't storm out. I just stared at the pieces, then back at her, wondering when my wife became someone who could say something like that and not flinch. She didn't apologize. She didn't look away. She just walked upstairs like she'd dropped off the recycling. Since that night, she's acted like nothing happened. She sings while brushing her hair. She scrolls on her phone at the dinner table. She asks me if I want milk with my coffee. I can't even look at her. But here's the part one can't shake. She's been glowing lately, smiling in ways I haven't seen in years, laughing at things on her phone, private things, silent things. It's like she tore me down to make space for someone else. And I think I know who. I tried to convince myself it was just stress. That the cruel thing she said was a heat-of-the-moment line, the kind of thing people say when they're tired and angry and don't mean it. But the next morning, when I walked into the kitchen and she was pouring orange juice like nothing happened, humming a song I didn't recognize, I realized something much worse. She meant it. She wasn't sorry. She didn't even remember it. "Want eggs?" she asked, without looking up. I stood there for a few seconds, hoping she'd glance my way, hoping something in her would flicker. Regret, confusion, even guilt. But no. She smiled at her phone and kept humming. That's when I noticed it again, the smile. Not the one I used to know, soft and sleepy in the morning, or the giggly one when I'd burn toast on purpose to make her laugh. No, this smile was sharper, almost rehearsed. It was the kind of smile people give to someone on the other side of a screen, not to their husband standing 3 feet away. I started paying attention. Subtle changes. New perfume I didn't recognize. She started working out again, but never when I was home. Her phone never left her side. Not even when she showered. I accidentally called her Rennie one night, something I've called her for a decade, and she gave me this look like I'd said the wrong name. One night, I woke up and saw the light from her phone illuminating the room. I pretended to sleep. I could feel her scrolling beside me, fingers tapping softly, quietly laughing under her breath. So I did something I'm not proud of. While she was in the shower, I opened her phone. The password had changed. That hit me harder than I expected. She always joked that we had no secrets. But here I was, locked out of her world with a silent slab of glass and a sick feeling in my gut. I didn't ask her about it. I didn't confront her. What would I even say? "Hey, honey. Remember when you insulted my manhood and then locked me out of your life?" No. I waited, watched, and 2 days later, when she told me she was going to a girls' dinner, I followed her. What I saw shattered whatever pieces of us I thought were still holding together. She told me it was just dinner with friends, that she'd be home by 9. She even kissed me on the cheek, something she hadn't done in weeks. That should have been my first red flag. Affection from Ren these days felt more like a courtesy than a choice, like tipping your waiter out of obligation. But that night, she touched my face like we were still real, like we weren't two strangers wearing wedding rings. I waited 20 minutes after she left. Then I grabbed my jacket, keys, and that hollow pit in my stomach, and followed. I didn't even know where I was going. No address, no names. Just a creeping suspicion that had been carving me out from the inside. I spotted her car at a dimly lit restaurant downtown. Not the kind of place you go for cocktails with girlfriends. Too quiet. Too intimate. The kind of place people go when they don't want to be seen. I parked across the street. My hands were sweating, even though the air was cold. I watched through the windows, heart thudding like I'd swallowed a clock. She wasn't alone. There was a man sitting across from her, tall, clean-shaven, expensive-looking shirt. He leaned in when he talked. She leaned in, too. Her smile was glowing, her eyes wide, animated. It was like watching a version of her I hadn't seen in years. Except she wasn't laughing at my jokes anymore. She was laughing at his. I watched her touch his arm. It wasn't flirtatious. It was familiar. And right then I stopped being angry. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. I just felt erased, replaced, like I was watching someone else live the life I thought was mine. They stayed for over an hour. At one point, she took out her phone, probably texting me something harmless. Running late. Lost track of time. Don't wait up. I wouldn't even read it. Couldn't. When they finally stood up to leave, I sank lower in my seat. He placed his hand gently on her lower back. The way I used to. They didn't notice me. Of course not. I was just the guy she left behind in the rain. Half a man. Forgotten in plain sight. I didn't follow them any further. I didn't want to know where they went next. But the next morning, she brought me coffee in bed. Said, "You looked tired last night." I wanted to scream, but all I did was nod. Because even now, I still don't know what's worse, her cheating, or how easily she lies about it. The morning after I saw her with him, I stared at myself in the mirror for nearly 20 minutes. It wasn't some dramatic movie scene. I wasn't crying or punching the glass. I was just studying, trying to figure out if I still looked like a husband, or if I had finally morphed into the stranger she saw me as. My face looked older, more tired than I remembered. My eyes had this permanent sunken look, like I hadn't slept in months. Maybe I hadn't, not really. Ren breezed past the bathroom door, humming again. Always humming now. She stopped briefly, popped her head in and said, "Don't forget we have that dinner with my parents next weekend." Then she kissed my shoulder. Light, distant, like I was a friend she used to love. I didn't respond. Just stared at the reflection of her back as she walked away. That day I tried to pretend. I cleaned the garage. I fixed the porch light she'd been nagging about for weeks. I even picked up her favorite wine on the way home from work. But the moment I stepped inside and saw her phone light up with a message, her face lighting up right after, I knew I was pretending for nothing. I asked her who she was texting. She said, "Just Lacey. You remember Lacey?" I nodded. I remember Lacey. Lacey had a husband and a 3-month-old. Lacey didn't send messages at 11 p.m. with little heart emojis in the preview bar. But I let it go. Because deep down, I wasn't ready to hear the lie dressed up as truth. That night, I lay next to her in bed, watching her fall asleep. Her breathing evened out. Her body shifted slightly toward me. Like instinct, not affection. I stared at the ceiling, counting each blink, each second, waiting for something inside me to tell me what to do. I didn't want to confront her. I didn't want her to admit it. Because once she said the words out loud, I wouldn't be able to unhear them. And I wasn't ready to be the man whose wife loved someone else. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I messaged him. I had memorized his license plate. Ran it through a friend who owed me a favor. Got a name, profile, a face to match the betrayal, and a contact button staring right at me. I hesitated, then typed, "You don't know me, but I know you've been seeing my wife." I pressed send. And in that moment I realized I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. I was afraid of what it would turn me into. I thought he wouldn't answer. I figured someone like him, clean-cut, smug, used to getting what he wants, would ignore me and keep slipping into my life through the cracks I was too weak to seal. But he replied. 2 hours later. His message was short, almost clinical. "I don't know what you think you saw, but Ren's not who you believe she is." That line, it hollowed me out. Not just because he denied it, but because he used her name like he owned it. Like he had some version of her I'd never met. some real Ren hidden from me, and maybe he did. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. Reread it. Over and over. There was no anger in it. No guilt. Just that cold stab of someone who isn't afraid of consequences because he thinks you're too broken to do anything about it. I didn't reply. Instead, I started watching. Closely. Every detail. Her routines, her calls, her changes in mood. And slowly, I began collecting pieces. Receipts tucked deep in her coat pocket from places I'd never been. Late-night showers she never used to take. The way she always faced away from me when she slept. The scariest part wasn't that she was cheating. It was how comfortable she'd gotten with it. She still asked me how my day was. Still laughed at TV shows we used to love. Still asked if I wanted a slice of pie after dinner. It was a performance so polished, I almost applauded it. One night, she came home later than usual. Said she got caught in traffic. I stood near the door, waiting. She kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "Thanks for being patient with me lately." I almost told her right then. About the message. The plate. The name. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because a part of me still wanted her to come clean on her own. Instead, I leaned into the lie and said, "Always." Then something strange happened. Her eyes filled with tears. Real ones. She hugged me tight. Tighter than she had in months. And whispered, "I'm sorry." And just like that, I wasn't sure what I was standing in anymore. Guilt? Manipulation? A dying spark trying to relight itself? Or something else entirely? Her apology haunted me for days. Not because it made things better, but because I didn't believe it. Came too suddenly, too clean, too perfect. Like a well-timed curtain drop after a shaky performance. And the part that scared me most? I wanted to believe it. I wanted her hug to mean something again. I wanted her tears to be real. But the moment she walked out for yoga, that Saturday morning, my gut twisted again. She left her purse on the kitchen counter. That never happened. Ren guarded that bag like it held national secrets. I stared at it for a full minute, chewing my thumbnail. Every logical part of me said to leave it alone. That going through it would make me the villain. That if I crossed that line, there was no turning back. But I crossed it. I didn't dig around like a maniac. I wasn't looking for perfume or receipts or love notes. I just opened it gently and found a folded napkin tucked behind her wallet. On it, in small, messy handwriting, were the words, "You're the only part of my life that feels alive." No name, no date, just that sentence. Punched the breath out of me. I didn't know if she wrote it or if it was written to her. But either way, it wasn't for me. I couldn't even remember the last time she said anything close to that about us. I stood there in the middle of the kitchen, holding that napkin like it was radioactive, and suddenly every moment over the past 3 months snapped into focus. The late nights, the glow, the humming, the carefully staged affection. I sat down and stared at the floor for what felt like hours. The dogs barked outside. The fridge kicked on. Life continued. But I just sat there holding someone else's truth in my hands. When she got home, she kissed my head, smiled softly, and asked if I wanted to watch a movie later. I said yes, because I wasn't ready to confront her. Not until I found out who the napkin really belonged to, and how long she'd been feeling alive without me. For 3 days, I carried that napkin in my back pocket like it was evidence in a case no one else was investigating. I kept unfolding it in quiet corners, on my lunch break, in the garage, even once while brushing my teeth, trying to make sense of the handwriting, the phrasing, the ink smudge at the corner. I searched our house for more. Nothing. No letters, no journals, no names. Just that one line that cracked the ground under everything I thought we had left. Then I made a mistake. I showed it to my brother. We weren't especially close, but I needed a voice that wasn't mine bouncing around in my skull. He read it twice, raised an eyebrow and asked, "Do you really want to know who it's for?" I said, "I need to." He sighed, then told me something I'll never forget. "If you dig deep enough, Lowell, you might not find closure. You might just find proof that you were the last to know. You should have stopped me. Didn't." That night, I waited until Ren was in the shower. I opened her laptop. We always shared the same password. She didn't think to change it there, probably thought I'd never touch it. But I did. And what I found wasn't a folder or a photo. It was worse. It was chats. An archived thread. Labeled only window. A stupid name, but it hurt anyway. It was all there. Weeks of messages. Long, late-night paragraphs. Some flirty, some poetic, some painfully intimate. But one line stood out like it was glowing on the screen. I wish I could wake up next to you instead of pretending every morning. That's when my stomach turned. Because that morning, she had kissed me on the forehead and brought me toast. Like nothing was broken. I sat in silence, feeling like a guest in my own life. I didn't even cry, I just went cold. When she came downstairs wrapped in a towel, smiling, asking if I wanted tea, I stared at her like I didn't know her name anymore. She noticed. "What's that look?" she asked, tilting her head. I said nothing, because in that moment, I realized I didn't want to fight for her. I just wanted to find the man she wrote all of that to. Not to yell, not even to blame, but to ask him one thing. When she holds you, does she still hum? I didn't confront her that night, or the next. I walked through the house like a ghost, answering her questions with nods, pretending to laugh when she made some offhand joke about the neighbor's dog. But inside, something had finally settled. Not anger, not grief, just clarity. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was done performing. She had already replaced me emotionally. I just hadn't left the stage yet. So I made a choice. I booked a cabin up north. Quiet, small, near a lake we used to talk about visiting but never did. I packed a bag, wrote a note, and left it on the kitchen table. No dramatic goodbye. No final argument. Just 5 words scrawled in shaky handwriting. I'm done pretending I'm enough. I turned my phone off and drove. The first night in the cabin, I couldn't sleep. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept expecting regret to show up and wrap around my throat. But it didn't. What came instead was relief. Not happiness. Not yet. But peace. In the morning, I stood by the water, alone for the first time in years, and breathed. It felt like I'd been holding that breath since the first time she rolled away from me in bed. Ren texted. A lot. First confused. Then angry. Then silent. I didn't answer, because I wasn't trying to fix what broke anymore. I was building something new with myself. A week later, I found a message from someone I hadn't heard from in years. My college friend Erin. She'd seen my name pop up on a mutual blog I'd commented on. She asked how I was doing. Said I sounded different, somehow. I replied, I'm still figuring it out, but I finally stopped shrinking to make someone else comfortable. We kept talking, and for the first time in forever, someone asked me how I slept, and meant it. Thanks for watching this story on Reddit Confessions. Have you ever stayed silent when you knew the truth? Or left without slamming the door? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this one. We'll see you in the next confession.